Chapter 2. And in this manner Edward's days passed one into the other. Nothing remarkable happened. Oh, there was an occasional small domestic drama. Once, while Abilene was at school, the neighbor's dog, a male brindler boxer, inexplicably named Rosie, came into the house uninvited and unannounced, and lifted his leg on the dining room table, spraying the white tablecloth with urine, and then trotted over and sniffed Edward, and before Edward had even time to consider the implications of being sniffed by a dog, he was in Rosie's mouth, and Rosie was shaking him back and forth vigorously, growling and drooling. Fortunately, Abeline's mother walked past the dining room and witnessed Edward's suffering. "Trumpet!" she shouted to Rosie, and Rosie, surprised in obedience, did as she was told. Edward's silk suit was stained with drool, and his head ached for several days after, but it was his ego that had suffered the most damage. Abeline's mother had referred to him as "it," and she was more outraged of the dog's urine on her tablecloth than she was about the indignities that Edward had suffered at the jaws of Rosie. And then and there was the time that a maid, new to Tulane household and eager to impress her employers, with her diligence came upon Edward sitting in a chair in the dining room. "What's this bunny doing here?" she said out loud. Edward did not care at all for the whole word of bunny. He found it derogatory and in the extreme. The maid bent over and looked into his eyes. "Humph," she said. She stood back up. She put her hands on her hips. "I reckon you're just like every other thing in this house. Something needed to be cleaned and dusted." And so the maid vacuumed Edward Tulane. She sucked each of its long ears up into the vacuum cleaner hose. She pawed at his clothes and beat his tail. She dusted his face with his brutality and efficiency, and in her zeal to clean him, she vacuumed Edward's gold pocket watch right off of his lap. The watch went into the mouth of the vacuum cleaner with a distressing clank, and the maid didn't even seem to hear. When she was done, she put the dining room chair back at the table, and uncertain with exactly where Edward had belonged, she finally decided to shove him among the dolls on the shelf in Abeline's bedroom. "That's right," said the maid. "There you go." She left Edward on the shelf in the most awkward and inhumane angle. His nose was actually touching his knees, and he waited there with the dolls twittering and giggling at him like a flock of demented and unfriendly birds, until Abilene came home from school and found him missing, and ran room to room, calling out his name. "Edward!" She shouted, "Edward!" There was no way, of course, for him to let her know where he was, and no way for him to answer her. He could only sit and wait. When Abilene found him, she held him close, so close, that Edward could feel her heart beating, leaping almost out of her chest in its agitation. "Edward," she said, "oh, Edward, I love you. I never want you to be away from me." The rabbit, too, was experiencing a great emotion, but it was not love. It was annoyance that he had been so mightily inconvenienced, that he had been handled by the maid as an object, a serving bowl, say, or a teapot. The only satisfaction to be had from the whole affair was that the new maid was dismissed immediately. Edward's pocket watch was located later, deep within the bowels of the vacuum cleaner, dented, but still in working condition, and it was returned to him by Abeline's father, who presented it with a mocking bow. "Sir Edward," he said, "your timepiece, I believe." The Rosie affair and the vacuum cleaner incident, those were the great dramas of Edward's life until the night of Abeline's 11th birthday, when at the dinner table, as the cake was being served, the ship was being mentioned.